Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here today. We have a packed hour. I'm going to walk you through what we've been building, why we've built it, where we're headed. So let's get right into it. A quick orientation of how today will run. So we're going to start with a quick platform overview just to make sure we're all speaking the same language. Then we're going to spend the bulk of our time on what's new. These are going to be the releases that we've shipped across data management, reporting disclosure, and investment intelligence. And then Dan Lake, our director of Optimize, will take us through the Optimize product, as well as our second half roadmap. And then we'll leave time at the end for your questions. It's worth noting that we will be recording this session. We will be sending out that recording. And as mentioned, we will have time to take your questions and provide answers at the end of this session. And for what it's worth, I'm sure I've met many of you before, but my name is Noelle Bohlen, Director of Product here at Measurabl. So everything we've shipped this quarter in Q2 connects back to a single thread, which is the data has to be right before anything else matters. You can't report confidently, you can't make good investment decisions, and you certainly can't act quickly if you don't trust your data, if you don't trust what's underneath. And so this quarter in Q2, we focused on strengthening that foundation. So that's better data quality, more transparent reporting, and tools that will actually help you to move from insight into action. And that's really the story for today and our Q2 releases and, of course, roadmap. Now, before we get into those releases, I want to quickly frame how we think about the Measurabl platform. So Measurabl is not a point solution. It's designed to support your full sustainability journey from very basic data collection all the way to investment grade reporting and, of course, planning for decarbonization. At the center of Measurabl's platform is Quantum. This is our sustainability data cloud, and everything else feeds in and out of that cloud. And what's important here is that you don't have to adopt everything at once. You start where you are, you build from there as your program matures and becomes more sophisticated. That being said, the more connected your data is, the more value you get out of every module. On the left, we have our Navigate product. This is sort of our headline product, if you will. This is for our owners and operators of real estate, direct owners, as is Comply and Optimize. But as we move over into the right, we shift into more of the indirect personas, banks, lenders, index providers. And so on the left, we have data collection, data quality management, reporting and disclosure, ordinance filing, decarbonization planning, managing those physical and transition risks. As we move over to the right, the data we actually collect from the owners then powers estimated data, ordinance information, physical risk for indirect owners. Again, these lenders, index providers, et cetera. And so we really provide a solution for the entire value chain of real estate, all the way from owners to investment managers. Now, I talked about the sustainability journey, and this is how we think about that in practice. There are three levels of value on this journey. And so the first is building a trusted data foundation. The next is going to be meeting your reporting requirements. And then finally, and ultimately, using all of that data to drive portfolio performance. And the progression really does matter here because you can't report accurately on bad data, and then you can't optimize what you haven't measured. So the work we've done this quarter hits all three levels, but especially the foundation, because smarter data management means everything before anything else can get easier. So let's get into why you're all here, which are the product releases. This first chapter of today is our data quality chapter. And this is the one that really comes up most consistently when we talk with all of you, our customers, and especially during the CEO tour, the CEO listening tour we held earlier this year. And what you all told us was that, you can have the best reporting tools in the world, but If the underlying data is incomplete or you can't trace it back to its source, therefore it's not trustworthy, none of it matters. So this is where we started. So the first release we have to talk about today is simplifying and accelerating utility bill uploads. Now, one of the most manual parts of sustainability data management is still uploading utility bills. It involves switching between systems, re-entering data, fixing issues, and then sometimes waiting for the data to process. And so we're changing that. Very soon, you'll be able to upload utility bills directly in the Data Manager module. This is in our Navigate product. And this is the same place where you're managing everything else related to data quality. We leverage AI to extract the data from the bill automatically. So the data from the bill is available immediately without any kind of manual work. And so if you have gaps to close in your utility data, this makes it much faster to close those gaps and with much more accuracy. Then we have locked, audited, and reported data. Now, this feature comes directly from customers going through GRESB or other audits. Now, once you've reported a number, you don't want anything, whether that's a feed update, a manual edit, a third-party sync, you don't want anything changing that data. Data locks, this functionality, lets you freeze meter readings for a specific reporting period. So nothing touches them after that. You reported results, they stay consistent, and your auditors can trust what they're looking at. This was one of the most highly requested pieces of functionality from our CEO listening tour. And as you can see, it's something that we've actively jumped on and are excited to see you all leverage. Now, until now, getting a clear picture of your portfolio's data quality meant pulling data from multiple sources or maybe having a discussion with your customer success manager. That is now changed with the data manager overview page. This is now one view where you can view completeness metrics, coverage metrics, any open issues you have as it relates to data quality, whether that be gaps in your data, outliers in your data. Maybe you have an account issue with a utility portal that needs to be resolved. That is all going to be consolidated into one place. And so you can see the state of your data at a glance, and you can immediately identify what needs attention from this overview page. And this is now available in Data Manager. Now, this release is about knowing what your meters are actually covering. So you can now see which spaces each meter serves and the total area covered directly in the meters table, again, within the Data Manager module. We're doing a lot in this Data Manager module as it relates to data quality, traceability, coverage. So in this instance, if a meter is not mapped correctly or a space does not have a meter associated to it, you'll see this immediately instead of discovering some gap during reporting downstream. Okay. Chapter 2, that second level of our sustainability journey, is about reporting. Now, once our data foundation is solid, the question becomes, can you actually stand behind the numbers you're putting in front of, whether it's investors, auditors, regulators, and that means being able to trace your results, whether it's explaining methodology, flagging what's estimated, meeting requirements for frameworks like GRESB. That's what this chapter is about. So we all know that GRESB updates its requirements every single year, and keeping up with those changes inside your platform is one of those things that should honestly just work. And so this year's cycle introduced net zero target setting. We saw estimated data flagging as required fields. Both of those and more are now manageable directly in Measurabl, and these updates flow automatically into the GRESB asset level export or ALE. So there's no manual patching required on your end. Additionally, another GRESB update, one of the things that can hurt your GRESB score or flag for a data quality review is asset intensities that fall outside expected ranges that GRESB provides. And so this new outlier detection report flags those outliers before you submit to GRESB. So we've also updated it to normalize for occupancy, which means that you are catching real anomalies rather than ones driven by vacancy, for example, or partial year data. So you catch these issues before they become a submission problem in the GRESB portal. And finally, we had a lot going on with GRESB in Q2. As many of you are, if you're going through external verification or assurance this year, this one is really for you and your advisors. So you now have direct access to emissions factors, for example, audit reports, or any supporting data that you need to trace any reported metric from the original utility bill all the way through the final submission. And that is the traceability that we've heard that you've told us auditors need. And so we've built that into this verification and assurance report. Following that, we have a release that allows you to clearly distinguish actual versus estimated data. This came up a lot in conversations when we're talking about reporting, where you need to know how much of your portfolio is based on actual meter data versus estimates, and what differences that makes to your numbers. This is also a requirement for GRESB. And so you can now see that breakdown clearly and understand how it affects your totals, your trends, and really this is the kind of transparency that lets you communicate results with confidence. And that's what you've communicated to us, and that's what this new functionality in our Insights module is meant to deliver to you. A very clear understanding of your portfolio data, how much is estimated, how much is actual. Moving on from GRESB and Insights, both within our disclosure and Insights modules in Navigate, we're moving on to ESGX and Diligence. These are the products that we looked at within our platform on the right side of that semicircle. These are for our investment management customers on the call. I think this is a fairly meaningful addition to our Diligence and ESGX products. So we do offer carbon estimates through these products, and now we can break those carbon estimates down by scope. So we now offer scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 carbon estimations in complete alignment with the PCAF financed emissions methodology. So if you're out there reporting on financed emissions or you're preparing for disclosure requirements, this now gives you the full breakdown you need, sourced from a PCAF accredited methodology. Okay, we've moved on to chapter 3, which is about making better decisions. And, I think we all feel this way, that sustainability has moved from a reporting obligation to really an asset management input. We have investors, lenders, and operators using this data to assess transition risk, of course, but also prioritize capital allocation, and most importantly, perhaps to demonstrate value. And so the releases in this chapter are about making all of those actions much easier for you all. So first and foremost, we have CREM, the Carbon Risk Real Estate Monitor. It's one of those most widely used frameworks for assessing transition risk in real estate portfolios. And those ESGX products I mentioned earlier are now including this CREM misalignment year figure. We're using this specifically in our ESGX securities product that is leveraged in the FTSE EPRA Nareit Developed Index. And what this means for that particular product is that you can see for any given asset in the FTSE EPRA Nareit Developed Index, when its emissions trajectory diverges from the decarbonization pathway. And you can factor that information directly into investment analysis for these publicly listed real estate companies, for which we have all of their building level data for. So CREM and this misalignment pathway is now integrated into ESGX securities. And just as an example, it's being leveraged in the FTSE EPRA Nareit Developed Index. And then as for Navigate users, jumping back over to our direct owners, those that are doing their own CREM analysis, we understand the CREM tool has now been sunset, but we still have the export embedded into our platform. And the export now supports 2025 reporting. So your alignment assessments and any kind of transition risk evaluations that you're doing will reflect your most recently completed performance year. And so this is just something that we have updated in the platform today in our Navigate reporting module. Okay, going to hand it off to Dan. We have a spotlight on Optimize.
Thanks, Noelle. Everything we've covered so far has been about better data, more confident reporting. But now I want to kind of change gears and talk about what you can do with that data. It's about turning that into action into real ROI. Um, that's what Optimize does. Optimize is where data becomes actionable savings. It's about taking your actual interval data and using it to surface opportunities for your building operators for savings and tells you where to act first across your entire portfolio. We found that customers typically find 5 to 10% energy savings where Optimize has been deployed. And where energy prices are heading now, this is an immediate boost to your NOI. And the best part about this, and something I'm really excited to talk about today, something we've recently released, and you may have seen in our last webinar, which is our no hardware solution to get you up and running in under a week. So next, I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means when I say no hardware and what it'll mean for you and deploying Optimize. So there's three reasons why this can be, really beneficial. It's no hardware, it's easy to start, and you'll get impact very quickly. Basically, time to value is much, much faster when you're using this no hardware solution. So first, let me take a step back and explain what I mean by no hardware. So there's no meters to install. There's nothing to set up. That alone can avoid roughly $5,000 per building in equipment and installation costs. And doing this, like making this easy to start, means Optimize connects through these low-cost utility data integrations that we use, and you can get your historical data immediately. So you're not waiting for months of collecting interval data in order to build a baseline in our tool. And getting impact means that fast impact means setup can be as quick as 1 week, and you can start identifying opportunities and saving right away. So here's why this matters right now. Energy costs are projected to rise 15 to 30% over the next 3 to 5 years. This is a way to get ahead of that spend across your portfolio without adding any infrastructure, because getting your historical data from day one to build that baseline, like I talked about earlier, not waiting a quarter before you can actually get running with it. Now, doing this with this no hard solution is kind of the starting point, but next I want to talk about how you can phase through and bring more data in as you move along your optimization journey with Optimize. So I want to show you that next with the next slide and talk about kind of where you go with us as you walk through this. Thanks, Noel. So I want to think about this as the ladder. You get real value at the first rung, and as you add capability, and then you can add capability whenever you're ready to. At the bottom is where we see a lot of portfolios today, which is just having visibility in, doing nothing, just visibility into our monthly utility bills. Rising costs and no visibility into where they're coming from. The first step requires no hardware, as I talked earlier, where you can start just getting that data directly from the utility. That's data that's delivered on a daily basis, getting that data, and then automatically surface opportunities. You get your historical baselines and require no upfront capital. This is where many of our customers begin, and this is where that 10 to 15% in energy savings starts to show up. Then, as you're ready, you can start adding actual hardware. So on-site metering and sub-meters that give you real-time interval data and much more granular monitoring, right down to individual spaces. Sub-metering also lets you separate the actual tenant use from the base building usage. And then as you move up that ladder, you can integrate directly with your building automation system to pull in equipment level mechanical system data like HVAC, lighting, and all of those, actual equipment that are being operated, and allows you to get drill down and find efficiencies right at the system level. The point is you can choose where to start. So starting with no hardware, no capital upfront, no installing of equipment. Then as you go, you move into real-time data and then driving all the way to equipment data to drive higher ROI, better asset value, and improve tenant comfort. So rolling back to the no hardware solution, a question we often get is which of my properties will actually have that no hardware solution available? So next, I want to talk about something that we're going to be releasing soon that I'm really excited about. So what we're seeing here is a portfolio utility map. This lets you see upfront which of your providers offer interval data that Optimize can ingest directly with no hardware required. In practice, this means that you can look across your whole portfolio and know immediately which buildings may have interval data available today, and where you may need to install hardware where those utilities don't offer that opportunity right now. It takes the guesswork out of getting started, and it helps you sequence your rollout so that after you go after the easy wins first, then you can move on to where you need to actually prioritize and invest capital to keep going with this. So next, I want to talk about another great feature that we've just released. This one's live and optimized today. We've expanded our real-time alerting to include water and other non-electric commodities. It flags spikes and anomalies as they happen. So a leak, a running fixture, a stuck valve gets caught before it turns into a 5-figure bill. It's the same principle as energy: continuous visibility, early warning, and action before the costs land. So that's what's available today in Optimize. Next, I want to talk about our broader roadmap across the rest of our products. So the first thing, we split this up into 3 different themes. So basically, we've thought about this as trusting your data, getting your time back, improving value. And so I'm going to talk through what we're releasing now in Q3 through the rest of 2026 and into 2027. So the first theme is trusting your data. This is all about smarter checks and fewer errors. We're adding granular role-based permissions so that the right people have the right access. We're giving you self-serve ways to flag or fix incomplete data, so you're not waiting for us to make that correction. We are quarantining problem data feeds that before they ever reach your reports, so that a bad data feed cannot quietly skew your numbers. We're bringing all this together in a redesigned data management workspace. The second theme that I want to talk about is getting your time back. This is really about less manual work and more automation. We're going to be automating meter and equipment data measure setup. We're going to be connecting more utilities without hardware, expanding that no hardware solution for Optimize, which will extend that across broader amounts of your portfolio. For submetering, we're separating landlord and tenant usage automatically. We're expanding utility data collection across the EU. And over time, we're going to bring it all together into one unified measurable experience so that it all works as a single product. The third theme is proving the value, which is about turning your data into decisions. We're expanding our predictive and equipment level measures so that you can catch more issues and catch them sooner. We're going to make a set of decarb usability improvements, and those which come directly from the feedback from the things that we've heard from our customers today. And we're upgrading the CREM methodology. And we're bringing in deeper cost data so you can build stronger ROI cases for the work that you want to get funded. One important note on all this is the roadmap reflects our current plans and priorities. So we want to be upfront in saying that timing and scope may evolve as we learn, as we talk to our customers and hear from you about what you actually want us to be building and when. But this is where we're heading. And this, as I've said, is shaped heavily by the things that we've heard from you and that Maureen heard from her CEO tour. So next, I just want to talk about how you can hear about us, how you can hear about updates, and make sure that you stay informed. So actually, how you'll actually hear about this, we're committing to more transparency in how we communicate, and there are 5 ways to stay current. First, our product updates, newsletters sent quarterly by email. Secondly, our release notes webpage. Third is webinars and trainings just like this one, which will be available on our website and in our help center. Fourth will be in-app notifications, so you can hear about new features right where you work. And fifth, going to be our roadmap webpage and the Measurable Help Center, so you can always see what's coming. If you take one action today, I'd recommend that you subscribe at learn.measurable.com/subscribe so you can stay in the loop. So next, I want to turn it back to Noelle to just close out on a couple things before we turn to Q&A.
Thank you, Dan. And thank you everyone for the Q&A you've already added. We still have lots of time to get through that, so please add any questions you might have. Just wanted to close on this note, a really big investment from our team and your teams as well. The first half of the year was our CEO Maureen Waters listening tour. And we spoke with 80 plus organizations globally. And there, of course, were plenty of themes and takeaways from those discussions. And we had a webinar just the other day where we went through those in depth. But from a product perspective, there were 4 themes that really stood out. The first of which should come as no surprise, which is you all want trust in your data. And just wanted to tie back what we've shipped and what we have planned to these various outcomes that you all made very clear that you're seeking from a platform like Measurabl. So you want more trust in your data. And so in Q2, we've shipped things like the data quality overview page to bring more transparency into your data quality metrics. We're working on, for example, more granular role-based permissions. You want to invite more people into the platform, but you want more control over what they can do, what they can see, what they can edit. More anomaly alerts, water anomaly alerts, and optimize. We want you to trust your data more, so we're flagging where we see inconsistencies. The second theme that we really heard from all of you on the tour was getting your time back. In some instances, sustainability teams have shrunk. I mean, teams have never been that big in the first place. You need to do more with less. That's the mandate that we're hearing from you all. And so we're trying to build things that give you your time back. So uploading bills, leveraging AI to make those bill uploads not only faster, but also more accurate. So less editing involved. Data locking, you're not going back and changing things when they've changed underneath you. Self-serve gap detection. Dan just mentioned more utilities without hardware, working on an AI assistant for insights. These are all ways in which we're trying to drive home this outcome, which is saving you time and giving you your time back to work on more strategic initiatives. The third theme that we really heard from you all on this tour, again, 80 plus meetings, was proving the value. And so this sort of manifests in our focus in Q3 on our decarb module in the Navigate product, working on CREM methodology upgrades. We're looking into much deeper cost data so we can help you all deliver that ROI of what you're working on within Measurabl and outside of the platform. And then finally, this was a through line throughout all of these different product themes, which is just being kept in the loop. Going back to one of our earlier slides, Measurabl's platform is quite vast, not only in terms of the personas we serve across the real estate value chain, but also within individual segments. Navigate alone has multiple modules. There's a lot to keep updated on, which we empathize with and understand. And so we did hear you and responded with more ways in which that you can understand what's been released and what's upcoming, whether that be through an email or through a web page. Again, as Dan mentioned, webinars like this. So you have spoken to us, 80 plus of you around the world, and we are listening. And these releases and this roadmap and these communication mechanisms are the way in which that we are responding to this feedback. And of course, we're always here and happy to hear more. And with that, I think we have several questions that have come in through the Q&A. So we will get into those now. I think the first few, Dan, I saw come in were related to
Yep.
Optimize. So you're in the hot seat probably for a little bit. We're going to start off with the no hardware solution. We have an attendee that said, can you speak more about how the no hardware solution and interval data can lead to efficiencies and savings opportunities? Can you give some examples?
Yeah. So the the idea of interval data more broadly, not just this non-hardware solution, is about being able to tie your actual what's happening in the building to your data. So I've been working with our customers for over a decade, helping them kind of tie their what they're doing in their building day to day to not just their energy bill, but to their actual interval data. So what we have is our operators, our users of the software are making changes in their building, changing their building start time, changing when they're shutting down the building, changing how they're, controlling the actual equipment, and then being able to see in real time or, near real time uh, how that affects their actual load curve, which then directly correlates to their bill and to their costs and their operating costs, which then correlates directly to, NOI, net operating income. So it's really about getting closer to the data and tying the actual actions of operating a building to those to that data and that real time kind of feedback loop. We have a we have another one that is about someone asked about the BAS integration, equipment optimization, and tenant comfort feature. So we talked a little bit about actual utility data, or interval energy data, which is where most of our customers start. But when you're ready to drill down and get into the real granular details, what we do is we integrate directly with the building automation system. We are able to map the equipment that's there, and and then bring that data into our platform so that rather than just seeing the whole building energy data, you're actually seeing what is the mechanical equipment doing. So the air handler that's ventilating the particular space, and these are the things that really are driving most of the addressable energy spend in a building. You're able to not just get visibility into that data, but then we're able to use that data to surface um, actual actionable opportunities automatically. So we're able to tell you not just your building started up earlier than it should have based on your occupied start time. We can say this particular piece of equipment is what's driving that start time, and or you're not controlling it to the actual sequence of operations that you need to most efficiently run your building and do it in a way that maintains tenant comfort. Because at the end of the day, uh, commercial real estate, the reason we're all here is to serve those tenants and those customers. And so without those happy customers, none of us would be here. So that's paramount. It's not just about trying to cut costs. It's doing it in a way that maintains that those happy customers.
Awesome. And Dan, I think there was one more, slide 25, the no hardware, more
Yep.
benefit. So
Yeah. So I I
the
I
question, by
think
the way,
the
is these systems appear to be expensive to run, maintain, quite subjective. This individual wanted to know, can you show the comparative cost of these systems versus other systems? Emerging economies will be reluctant to adopt these.
yeah. So this is where we're trying to, and this is where the no hardware solution comes in. We're trying to give people the ability to deploy products like Optimize in a way that doesn't take a large upfront cost, because especially when you start talking about smaller buildings, different asset types, it may just not be economically feasible to deploy hardware that requires upfront investment. And so as smart meters become more ubiquitous, as utilities make interval data more available, we're trying to get to a point where we can bring the cost down and the time to value down as quickly as possible, and so that we can put the data into the hands of our customers, wherever they want to deploy it. I'm not sure if I answered that question well, but happy to also take this question offline and try to talk about some of that comparison.
Thank you, Dan. We have two more that I'm happy to take. So a fellow Noelle asked, you guys mentioned the import of electrical bills using AI without any manual work. Noelle asked, what level of error are you guys receiving when going through this process? We have been attempting bringing bills through import, but associating the different line items with the correct categories is quite challenging. And I completely empathize and agree with this, Noelle. I think, you know, there are thousands upon thousands of utility bills, each with their own individual bill structure. And it's very fun when it changes, as it often does. And so uploading that data and extracting it correctly is a challenge. I will say with AI and various models improving over time, we reap that benefit. But that being said, we never let a bill process into Measurabl without some kind of human in the loop. And so every new utility provider we bring onto the platform that we extract data from, there is a human reviewing the data that we extract from the bill to ensure that the correct fields match the field on the bill. And so for anyone on the call, any kind of AI we deploy, but specifically talking about this bill upload, there's always some element of a human in the loop before the data gets inputted into the system on a more automated cadence. And so there is that person checking what is on the bill, what is in the product, and do they match? And there's sort of a series of that goes on until the AI learns well enough that the correct fields have been extracted. I hope that helps, Noelle, in terms of that question about AI extraction. And then finally, there was a question related to this individual has an annual, they have data of annual energy consumption and area, and then they calculate the energy performance indicator, kilowatt hours per square meter per year in Excel. And they asked, what about suggestion of possible energy saving measures? Star rating standards for IT, banking, commercial buildings. I think this one's particularly interesting because it's something we're actively doing discovery on the product side. So if this is, if you're willing to chat with your CSM about this, we'd love to hear it. I know this is anonymous, but Measurabl as a result of the large magnitude of GRESB reports we submit every year, we have lots of project data because projects are a way in which you can achieve more points using GRESB. And so we're actively working on a model where we can recommend projects based on all of that data we have to individuals like yourself. We're especially thinking of this in the decarb module, where a lot of our customers are already doing transition risk planning, scenario analysis. Currently, you can sort of bring your own projects into the platform, figure out which project makes sense during which year and when. But we've heard from many customers, can you recommend to us projects? Whether that be because they don't want to undergo an audit or just the sheer time it takes to get project data into the system. And so this is something that we are exploring. Whomever submitted this question, we certainly have an advantage just due to the data we have on projects. So more on this to come, more likely in our next roadmap webinar, which we encourage you all to attend, which will be in about 1 quarter's time. And so that about wraps it up for the questions that we had from you all, if there's nothing else. Big thanks to Dan and to the product engineering teams at Measurabl for this Q2 release. Looking forward to seeing you again to chat about Q3. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.